Amen.
Good evening, Region. My name is Jeff. I have a new life in Christ. Sins, struggles, recovery from, control, core belief, anxiety from that, and cynicism. And I say that every week, and it'll tie into what I'm going to talk about this evening. You know, the thing about this ministry is I don't think anyone ever comes to Region because everything's going great. It's just not, I just want to improve, I just want to better myself. Usually what draws us is something broken, an awareness of it, a loss, and that's what kicks in. I'm always mindful of how many things I share of a personal nature. So tonight's going to be one of those nights, but this lesson is pretty powerful to me. We're going through the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to talk about Ecclesiastes Chapter 3. Now, this is a pretty famous chapter. So I remember when this song came out. I do not. The song's probably written in the 50s. You could Google it. I think it's the late 50s. But a group called The Byrds released it. Turn is the song, and it was 65. That is before I was born. And it has to do with every season under heaven. And we could have all sung it tonight because it's actually almost verbatim right out of the Bible. And tonight's going to feel like a downer. But the series is how to enjoy your life. Why would you do that? Unless you're one of those fortunate people where you've had no loss, no pain, no regret. Then if that's you, I don't even know why you're at Region. So we're here to encourage the rest of you. We don't like you. I'll give you the theme as a review, and this will be pretty quick to the point tonight. Talking about life as a gift from God. So the analogy I've used over and over again is if I would give a tricycle to my grandchildren and just spend a week with them. One of them's 2. He's getting close. I would want 3 things from him. First of all, I would actually want him to ride the bike correctly. It's a gift. And God has given you the gift of this life to enjoy. That is what the book of Ecclesiastes says. It's not hedonism. So the question I ask every week, are you enjoying your life? Next after that, I would hope my grandson, not out of some narcissistic way, would be thankful to me that I gave him the gift. So here's the tough part. We won't talk about this a lot, but Ecclesiastes is specifically written to people who are young. What? Because he says at the end of the book, remember your Creator in the days of thy youth. Now, if I could grab Mr. Peabody and go in a Wayback Machine, and I'm dating myself right then, I could go do that again, but I can't do that now. I can't remember him in my youth. So it does apply to me to teach younger people to do that. But the author's screaming, will you remember me when you're young before the evil days come? So I'd want my grandson to be thankful I gave him the bike. And I always say this as a joke. I wouldn't want him to pick up the tricycle and hit his little brother with it. And although your life is a gift for you to enjoy, it is not a gift for you to hurt other people with it. Does that make sense? So when you go through inventory in Region, it's easy to think of how people have sinned against us. But it's more difficult to really own how we've what? Sinned against others. Okay? The context of the book is simply this, life under the sun. So the reason it's not taught a lot in church is it doesn't have anything to do with the afterlife or heaven. Under the sun means literally your life on this planet. And this is review, so when it says you die like a beast, wait. Now dogs go to heaven, but other than that, other beasts don't. I'm joking. But the reality is, I don't just die like a dog. There's an afterlife, but not in Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes, It looks the same because it's life under the sun. Now, tonight's going to be the one time with some specificity in the entire book where God's going to talk about eternity. Okay? And he has to for what we're going to talk about tonight. Because as Paul said, if in this life only we think have life, we're going to be miserable. And the answers to some of our pain won't come in this life. They just won't. He uses this analogy, which is kind of odd when you go through it. It's a book on how to enjoy your life. It really is, but he calls your life vanity. And this is the meaning of Hebel, the word. It's not meaninglessness, and a lot of versions will say that. But it's not what that means. It literally means vapor, has an unsubstantial nature, meaning you can't really get your hands on it. And more important than that, it's transitory. Whoa, sorry. I didn't know. Sorry. Means it's going fast. Oh, ouch. Life sucks, but it's going to get better. All right, let's go. We stream this, don't we? Ouch. All right. Your life's going fast. And the older you get, the faster it goes. And I said this, for those who grieve, and we do a lot with grieving and counseling. You have to grieve at your pace, but I always say this caveat. You can decide how long you'll grieve and stay stuck, but you can't decide how long you live. And sometimes here's some hard truth. You can stay in your addiction as long as you want, but you can't decide how long you're going to live. And you can put off asking forgiveness and reconciling with family members for things in the past, but you don't get to decide how long you want. You live. You can waste your whole life not enjoying it and doing the things you're supposed to. You can. But that's not enjoying it. Does he really want you to enjoy your life? Here's what Solomon said. So I commend the enjoyment of life because there's nothing better for a person under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. And that's not talking about going out and getting stoned. Eat and drink, and the Bible's talking about community, enjoying each other. Okay? Then joy will accompany them in their toil all the days of their life. God has given them when? Under the sun. So that's the review. So I'll give you the breakdown of the book, and I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. There's three main topics in the book of Ecclesiastes: God, man, and your life. And there's relationships between all of these things. So there's a relationship between God and your life and a relationship between your life and God. There's a relationship I have with my life and my life coming back to me. So if I was to write it out, these are the universal principles. God in life, man in life, and God in man. Now I know this is kind of nerdy and kind of heady, but this is going to make sense here in a second, I promise. The first week, we kind of went through man and life, and it was simply this. God gives my life to me as a gift, right? But my life's very limiting. The reality is we all wish we would live longer. There's a guy in the Bible who prayed for that. His name was Hezekiah. 15 more years. He actually wasted it. We always want to live longer. Or we want to live longer as long as we have good what? Health. No one idealizes, being put in a nursing home where people don't come visit you or you don't remember people. That's not what we want. The book of Ecclesiastes talks about those days come for most all of us. You say, man, this is depressing. Where does the enjoyment part? It's a tough lesson. I'll get to it, I promise. I'll give you the big idea today. Our life is beautiful. It is a gift. The first time I taught about you won the lottery that you exist. Not to be too crude, but of all the sperm and egg that ever existed in the history of humanity and us as a species, Whether you believe in a young earth by faith, or I don't care if you're an atheist and you believe in evolution. Either way, you won the lottery. The likelihood that your DNA exists compared to all the times all those sperm and eggs never reproduced a human is astronomical. But this life you've been given that is a precious gift from God is oh so limiting. My wife and I are planning on going on a trip. Next year it's our 10-year anniversary. She wants to go to England. She's into genealogy. I'm going to go. So I'm YouTubing. How do you see the whole country of England in a week? I'm not joking. And then tag on Ireland for another week. You ever think about people come to the States? I'm going to be in the States a week. What are you going to show them? New York, Washington, D.C., L.A., you're out. Life's limiting. You're only going to see so much of this planet. You're only going to be in a relationship with so many people. I've done 2 careers in my life, both of them poorly. The reality is, you know what? You don't get a chance to do all the things you want. You know, kid, live your dreams, do whatever you want. I got news for you. None of you are going to be president. I could if I really wanted. Nah, ain't going to happen. Their guidance counselor lied to you. Life's limiting. TikTok. I tried to run a 5K on vacation. I ran most of it. It's limiting, but it still is gift. But he said it's beautiful, but I have this caveat there. Beautiful in whose time? So here is the passage that we all think we understand, but we don't. God in life. I'll give you what your life's supposed to do next week, but for this week, here's the big point. God's designed your life. And then he goes through this unbelievable poem that everyone knows, that the Byrds even made a song about in a hit. And we know it. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose, where? Under heaven. So we're still talking about life under the sun. So you just go through it here. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. I'm not going to go through it all verse by verse because this isn't supposed to be a theological, exegetical outline in the book. But do you see the contrast? We rejoice when a baby's born, and we cry when our loved ones what? Die. A time to weep and a time to laugh. If you're going through regen, probably, you know very well when you've cried in this life. And you know very well when you've laughed in this life. I wish it was all being born, planning, healing, building up, laughing, and dancing. Couldn't they have just left half of the poem off? But if you don't know me, I oversee a counseling center here. One of my favorite quotes is by Henry Cloud. He defines integrity as the courage to meet the demands of what? Reality. Truth, aletheia in the Bible, the truth will set you free. Reality will set you free. You will not enjoy this life if you are not prepared for the time to die, the time to pluck, the time to kill, the time to break down, the time to weep, and the time to what? Mourn. Now here's the toughest thing. Well, I'll say a lot of tough things here in a second. Most of my growth has come through pain. I grow more through my pain than 1,000 sermons by Pastor Phil encouraging me. I grow more through my loss than all the encouraging things people speak to me. But you have to be able to deal with it. So just take a second and do an inventory of your life. When did you weep? I've shared my story. Executive pastor at a church, ran about 2,500, went through a divorce. I remember still going to work and going in my office and just crying. I didn't want it. I remember when the man who had mentored me in his 40s had a brain aneurysm and died suddenly and didn't recover. I don't remember this, but I was born in at 4 and 5. I couldn't walk. I was crippled. Don't have a lot of memories from that, but some. Those are the losses in life. He goes on, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. You say, well, that seems pretty clear. What's so hard about that? Remember the main point? God's designed your life. These aren't your choices. That's not what it's about. It's something called the sovereignty of God. You mean God has designed my life with loss and pain? Yes. So when I put that tagline of the things I've struggled with in my life, and I always say cynicism, and I never really expand on that, long before it was a fad to do deconstruction of your faith, clear back to elementary, I was deconstructing mine. What do I mean? Why, God, do you design that? Well, it's because of sin and his permissive meal and blah, 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 blah. Take your elementary apologetics and go away. That doesn't do it. The reality is, he's designed your life. So when I think of the loss of my life, what do I do with that? Because we all deal with it. Some severely. Counseling center, loss of a child, that's a grief that scars forever. The abuse of from the ones who should have loved you. Those are the wounds. And God designed my life. I'll give you a glimpse. You say, I thought I was enjoying my life. I'll give it to you in a second. That's my Uncle Gary and my Aunt Ann. I'll drive to Springfield tomorrow for her visitation and her funeral the next day. She taught me to ride a bike. She babysat me. And you always have like the uncles and the aunts that are the cool ones. She bought me Let Me Be Rocked by AC/DC when I was like 10 years old. She was awesome. It was time for her to what? I'll watch my dad grieve. And I'll be there for my uncle. God designs what? Life. I went through the divorce. But there was a time to laugh and dance for me. That's my remarriage. That's me happy. That's me fortunate, heading into 10-year anniversary. That's God redeems. Well, that's your soulmate, the only person in your life. I outgrew fairy tales a long time ago. That's a person God's allowed me to share my life with until we die. But I'm happy. That's a time for me to embrace. I like it. That's my mom and dad. They celebrated 63 years of marriage. That's awesome. This week. They started dating 4 years earlier than that. 67 years they've been together. They started dating in junior high. I told my granddaughter that today. He would have been 13 or 14. She's 10. She just looks at me. That's way too young. I said, yes, it is. Are you happy? I'm happy, and I've shared this before. But as the dementia grows, he remembers my name less, and he tells the same stories. I hate that disease. Not really a fond fan of God for creating it and allowing it. Oh, that's the working of sin. God designed your life. And if you don't get a hold on that, you can't enjoy your life. But from that, last week, I was in heaven. I went to a resort, took the kids. Didn't really want the kids there, but they're necessary to bring them, the grandkids. Vacation would have been better with just the grandkids without the kids, but you got to bring them. Took them to the beach, took them to the pool, went bike riding. That's a time to laugh. You see the point? So what does Solomon give us? And this is it. What profit has the worker from that which he labors? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in his time. Now, this is the hardcore part. That earlier list, time to be born, a time to die, a time to mourn, a time to laugh. God says it's all beautiful. In his what? In his time. And then he says this, also he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from the beginning to the end. It's life under the sun. It's from birth to death. So this will be the nerdy part. I have self-awareness that I'm alive and it matters to me. I have self-awareness that I'm not made for death and I hate it. I have self-awareness there has to be more than the comfort and peace I experience in this life because it's not stinking enough. And Ecclesiastes screams, yes, it's life under the sun, but I'm going to give you a glimpse. This life's more than now. You're right. There's something inside of me that an animal doesn't have. They live by instincts, but they don't sit around contemplating where they're going after they die. I do. I contemplate where my aunt is right now. And as much as I hate the dementia, I contemplate a time where healing can happen. But I don't get it in this life. So you read a Bible verse and you're happy. Doesn't work for me. Just doesn't. What works for me? God, I don't like everything about this life, even though you designed it. But I know this. One day in your time, then I'll see it. And my faith is that day. I don't live in a fairy tale facade of trying to make good out of everything in this life during this life. When I am counseling, I don't just say, your child's in a better place, to parents who miss them every birthday, who miss them every time they see their peers grow older, who miss them every time they look at a pet they played with and quote some verse about heaven. I don't do that. I don't have the answer of why this happened in your life, and you won't be able to figure it out in this life. But if you want to enjoy this life, know this. There is a time in God's time when you'll see it was all beautiful. If you don't have that anchor to hold on to, you'll eat your way out of it, compartmentalize your way out of it, get stoned out of it, get addicted out of it, or worse than worse, create false religious legalism crud that no one really believes, that people just tell themselves to convince themselves they're not really hurting in this life. And church makes a lot of money off people looking for that. The reality, though, is this. It's not just this life. And in God's time, everything will be what? Beautiful. I don't get to be happy about my dad's dementia now, because I'm not. One day, in God's time, he'll show me it was beautiful. Does that make sense? If you don't get it, give you something positive of the wisest man, Tolkien. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. There's a lot of things I wish we didn't experience in this life. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to what? The courage to meet the demands of reality and a perspective that only in God's time will this make sense and be beautiful is the key for you enjoying your life. You have to fight for that perspective. Thanks.